Welcome. And let's say the bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Okay, here we are. And hopefully I have, yes, very good. So Moses, of course, speaking to the Israelites and reviewing some of their history and also telling them as they're about to enter the land of Canaan that the people, they're not allowed to encroach on certain territories and giving them warning about that. So here we have. Um, they're going at this point, it says, we turned and went by way of the wilderness of Moab. So I'm going to see if I can show you that. Let's see if I can get that up. All right, that's not working, but this. So let's see. Well, this is the wilderness of Paran, the wilderness of Sin. I mean, here's Moab, but let's see. I can barely read this. Oh, here, the way of the wilderness of Moab. So apparently they're at this point, right? They're up here. They've had those 40 years, and now they're getting ready to enter into the land of Canaan. All right. So, okay, let's go back just to give you an idea of where things were. Let's see if I can do this. Okay, one moment. Here we are. Uh, so right, Vanefim navor derech midbar Moab. So we turned and we went by way of the wilderness of Moab. Vayomer, excuse me. Vayomer Hashem Elai, and the Lord said to me, Moses, of course, speaking, Al tatsar et Moab. Do not harass Moab. The altit garba milchama, and do not intimidate them through warfare. Ki lo eten lacha me'artzo Yerusha, because I will not give you an inheritance from their land. Ki livnei Lot natati et ar Yerusha, for to the children of the descendants of Lot I have given Ar as an inheritance, and Ar is a name of an area or a city. And Rashi's going to talk about that in a moment. Here we are. The altitgar, do not intimidate them, threaten them, perhaps, etc. Lo, okay, so the point here, though, is the language, looking at the language very carefully and drawing inferences from the language. Lo asar lahem al Moav, right? So God only forbid them regarding Moab, Ela milchama, the warfare. He only forbid them from going into war with Moab. Aval miyarim hayu otam, but they would intimidate them. They were able to scare them, right? V'nir lahem, and they would appear to them, that is, the Israelites would appear to them, kishehem mezuyanim, fully armed. So they'd show up fully armed in the presence of the Moabites. Lefichach, and for this it's written back in Numbers 22, Vayagor mi Moav mi pnei ha'am, and Moab was fearful on account of the nation, that is, on account of Israel. Shahayu sholalim, because they were told they couldn't wage war with them, but they were looting them, uvozazim otam, and they were taking spoil for them. Aval bivnei Ammon, but regarding the Ammonites, ne'emar va'al titgargam. So there it says va'al titgarbam. It says, do not intimidate them. Shum gerui, right? So that had to do any kind of intimidation. And why? Why was this distinction made between the Ammonites and the Moabites? By the way, both descendants of Lot. They were from Lot had two daughters. We may have remembered reading that passage back in Genesis. And of course, he was intimate with them after the destruction of the five cities. And the daughters thought they were the only people left in the world, and they only had their father from whom to become pregnant. So the story is they gave their father a lot of wine, they made him drunk, and then they cohabited with him. And one of the daughters, the older one, gave birth to Moab, named the child Moab, and the second daughter, the younger daughter, named her son Ammon. Ammon. So we're going to see the reference here. Okay. Bischar tzniut imam. It had to do, the reason why with the Ammonites they were treated better by the Israelites was as a reward for the modesty of their mother. Shelo pirsama alaviha, because she did not suggest or make known regarding her father, in other words, who the father was, but that it was her father. Kamoshe asta habechira, as the older one, the firstborn, did. Shekra'a Sham b'na Moav, because she called her son, the older one, called her son Moav. And Moav is it's almost like saying, from my father, from the father. So, and regarding Moab, Shem HaMedina, well, a Medina we'd call a province, and that's how Rashi understands the term is that it's a province in Moab. Ha'emim lifanim yashvuva. And prior to that, in other words, prior to the Ammonites and the Moabites taking over, another people had lived there known as the Emim. So the Emim had lived there prior to the Moabites conquering them. Am Gadol Verav, Veram Ka'anakim, and a mighty, a strong, a mighty, a great nation, and Rav would be numerous, Ramkan Anikim, and tall, high, like giants. Excuse me. Emim, Lifanim, etc. So Rashi. Ata Savur, right? You know, right? You hold the opinion. Shezo Eretz Refa'im, right? That this is the land of the Refa'im. Shinatati lo la Avraham, that I had given it to Abraham. So in other words, there's also this sense that the reason why the Israelites could go in to the land of Canaan is because God had given this land to Abraham, and of course the surrounding nations as well. So this was one of those nations. Lefi ha'emim shehem refamim, because the emim, who are also Refa'im, yashvuva bifnim, because they occupied that area prior to the Moabites or the Ammonites. Aval lo zohi, but you should not think that that is a correct deduction. You shouldn't think that that's appropriate. Ki otan Refa'im, because those particular Refa'im, and we maybe could translate Refa'im as giants, horashti mipnei bnei Lot. I drove them out, right, on account of the children of Lot, v'hoshavtim tachtam, and I placed the children of Lot in their place. So this is an admission, right, here in the Bible, that this particular area did not belong to the Israelites. That even though it might have been thought that it could be, the reason why the Refa'im were driven out, and again, it was done in the merit of Abraham, was that this went to Abraham's nephew Lot, these particular areas. But in general, you can see that there's an argument about the fact that this particular area has exchanged, possession has been exchanged over the course of the centuries. So let's keep going. Now, there's a little bit of a discussion about Refa'im. Refa'im yechashvu afhem ka'anakim. So the Refa'im were also considered as giants. V'hamoavim yikra'u lahem emim, and the Moabites were the ones who called them emim. In other words, Amim, Refa'im, same people, same nation. It just happens to be that Amim is a term that the Moabites used in reference to the Refa'im. So, Ha'amim Lefanim. Let's see if we're there. Yes. Okay. Uh, right. So we did. I don't know that we translated this. No, we did. We did, of course. And now we're on to 11. Please excuse me. Refa'im yechashvu, etc. Right? They are considered. Refa'im hayu nechshavim otam emim ka'anakim. So, with regards to the Refa'im, right? Those emim were considered just like the Refa'im as giants. Hanikraim Refa'im. So he says giants are called Refa'im. And why are they called? Why are these giants called Refa'im? Al Shem Shekol Hara'eh Otam, on account of the fact that anyone who saw them, Yadav Mitrapot, his hands become weak. Okay, so it's a metaphoric way of saying that they become completely, they're frightened out of their wits when they see these people. Amim. So here's the word al shem she'ematam. So where do we get this word amim? And that's because there's a word ema, which means dread, right? Al shem she'ematam mutelet al habriot. And the reason is that the dread of them is placed on the creatures. So in other words, that everyone who sees them is goes into dread. V'chein, and likewise, uveseir yashvu hachorim, right? And so similarly, it says in Seir, the chorim, the Chorites, dwelt. V'natatim livnei Esav, and I gave them to the children of Esau, the descendants of Esau. So again, point being that this territory has exchanged hands quite a few times. Going on, Uvis Seir. So, and in Seir, so now we're talking about the descendants of Esau, right? Yashvu HaChorim Lefanim. The Chorites dwelt originally, and I imagine they also would have been giants. Uvnei Esav Yirashum, and the descendants of Esau disinherited them. V'yashmidum mipnehem, and they destroyed them from before them. Vayeshvu tachtam, and they settled in their place. Kasher asa. Interesting. Now we have what sounds like an editorial comment from later on. Kasher asa Yisrael le'eretz Yushalto, just as the Israelites did to the land of its inheritance, Asher Natan Hashem lahem, which the Lord had given them. So it's so interesting, of course, that these particular issues as to who is entitled to the land is ancient. It's an ancient issue, and apparently still unresolved. Yeah. So Yirashum disinherited them. Lashon Hove. So this particular expression expresses constancy. That's what how Safaria understands it, right? Literally, the word Hove means present. So in other words, ongoing. Klomar, that is to say, Natati bahem koach, I gave them the power, the strength. In other words, I imagine this is talking about the descendants of Esau. I gave them power, shahayu morishim otam v'holchim, that they would be constantly disinheriting them. They would be taking over their land and settling there. Going on a little bit more. Ata, now. Kumu, arise, ve'ivru lachem et nachal Zared. Go and cross over the Wadi Zared, ve'na'avur et nachal Zared. And in fact, that's what they did. They went and they crossed over the Wadi of Zared, and I'm going to show you a picture of that. Let me see if I can do that. Okay. So I looked very carefully for the Wadi Zared, and there it is right here, right? So they needed to cross over this right there. right? To the Wadi Zared. That's where it's looks like it's maybe tributary towards the Dead Sea. That's what it looks like here anyway. Okay, back in here. Bahayam, let's take a look in case there's anything. No, no. V'hayamim asher halachnu mikadesh barnea ad asher avarnu et nachal zared, or zered, and the days or the years which we journeyed from Kadesh Barnea to the point where we crossed over the Wadi Zered, Shloshim Ushmoneh Shana, was 38 years, ad tom kol hador, until the end of the generation, Anshe HaMilchama, the men of war, Mikerev HaMachaneh, from the midst of the camp, Kasher Nishba Hashem Lahem, just as the Lord had uh, sworn to them. I don't think there's any Rashi until we go to verse Tetvav, so the very next verse. V'gam Yad Hashem Haitabam, and likewise, literally it means the hand or the power of God was against them, Lahumam, to root them out, Mikerev HaMachaneh, from the midst of the camp, Ad Tumam, until they were finished. They weren't any of them left, is what that's saying. Let's take a look. Haitabam, this is God's hand being amongst them. Lemaher ulahumam betoch mem shana. So idea is that he wanted to speed up since they could not cross until that entire generation was wiped out. So he sped up that process, is what it's saying, right? Betoch mem shana, so that it all happened within 40 years, shelo yegumun livnehem, so that they not cause their children od lehitakev bamidbar, to have to delay any further in the wilderness. Let's go on. Vayhi kasher tamu kol anshe hamilchama lamut mikerev ha'am, and so it was when all the men of war had completely passed away from the midst of the camp, etc. Okay, Vayhi kasher tamu. So he says it would be, yep, okay, doesn't look like, let me see. Yeah. No, nothing there for the time being. Interesting. So let's go on a little bit. Vaydaber Hashem elai lemor, the Lord spoke to me, saying. So there it is. Vaydaber Hashem elai v'gomer. Aval mishiluach hameraglim adkan. So it was saying at that time God spoke to me. In other words, from the time going all the way back for the 40 years, but from the sending off of the spies adkan until this particular moment, lo ne'emar b'parsha zo. Okay, it never was mentioned. Literally here, it means that in this particular parsha, Vaydaber ela vayomer. It doesn't say Vaydaber, he spoke. It says vayomer. It says he said. So this is interesting because this does say Vaydaber here. Okay, but anyway, so I think there's this footnote here, and let's see. I'm looking to see. It's possible that that there's some way to explain Rashi's point here. Okay. At any rate, Vaydaber, it doesn't say he spoke, but rather he said, L'lamedcha, to teach you, Shekol lamed chet shana sha'Yisrael nizufim, that for the entire 38 years where Israel was basically in disgrace, I'll translate it that way, Lo nityached imo hadibar b'lashon chiba, chiba panim, chiba panim el panim. So what he's saying is that God did not reveal himself to Moses face to face for those 38 years, those years when the Israelites were in disgrace, so to speak. Vayishuv hadat, meaning, in a clear, calm manner. She'ein hashchina shora, because the Shekhinah does not alight al hanevi'im, on the prophets, ela bishvil Yisrael. The only reason that the Shekhinah appears to those prophets is on account of the Jewish people, is on account of Israel. And if God did not want to communicate to Israel at that point, he would not be communicating with the prophets either. Anshe HaMilchama, the men of war, Sheben Kafshana Hayotzim Batzava, he says, because one goes into the army from 20 years old and up. And let's see. Okay, I think I'm going to stop here. To be continued. Let's see here. Okay. We'll do it right there. Okay. And I'm going to stop the share. All right. Any thoughts before I stop the recording? Okay.